Hey there. I figured I would come on and do a little bit of a stream. I haven't been on in a while. I was banned last weekend. That wasn't fun, but I'm back. Very much thanks to you guys, people who showed up and supported me. Very grateful. But I figured I would pop on and do a little bit of mushroom Q&A if anyone has questions. I mean, if the party is partying, a learning party, yeah, let's party. I would love to talk about fungi with you guys if you have questions. So, I mean, I can talk a little bit about, the posters behind me, or we can get into, some fun stuff. Ooh, so I get this question a lot, Lorax, about the rarest mushroom. And what I usually tell people is the rarest mushroom has a lot to do with where you live. Mushrooms that are rare in one place might be super common somewhere else. I would say the mushrooms that are the most highly sought after, and thus in some ways the rarest and demand the highest price, are truffles. I think a lot of people are fairly familiar with that. Truffles have really high value. And that's because truffles are ephemeral, ethereal. They are strongest when you pick them out of the ground, and from every point after that, their quality is going down, and they're losing value. You can keep a truffle for about 7 to 10 days before it completely gives up the ghost and is not really flavorful anymore. And so, the life of a truffle is usually that somebody will pick it in a forest in Italy and then sell it to a sort of a merchant or a buyer who then sells it to some international buyer who then sells it to restaurants and things here in the States. So it's usually changed hands 3 or 4 times and been in transit across the world for about a week before it even gets to America. And that's why truffles are so expensive. And it's also why they're so rare, because they aren't necessarily grown here. They're imported internationally. They have incredibly high carbon footprint. There are American trufferys that are coming online, and you can get some truffles from Oregon, but again, they demand a fairly high price because they're pretty good quality. So rarity in fungi is weird, because rarity is kind of in the eye of the beholder a little bit, And there are mushrooms out there that are rare, potentially unknown to science, but there's probably more mushrooms unknown to science than maybe even the ones we already know about. Maybe not about mushrooms, but fungi in general. Right, there's supposed to be something like 150,000 species of fungi that have been well classified, and there's estimates that there's more somewhere between 2.2 and 3.8 million species of fungi that we don't know that much about. So, on an overall sense, that's pretty crazy. There's a lot of stuff on our planet that we know a lot about, and we do know a lot about fungi, but there's still a lot that we don't know, possibly more so than almost any other form of life. So, Fair, you want to know about studying mycelium? Have you read Merlin Sheldrake's book, Entangled Life? It's a really good one. He talks a lot about mycelium. Paul Stamets' Mycelium Running. The book's a little problematic. There's some stuff that Paul says in there that I don't totally agree with, but Mycelium Running is a good book if you want to learn about mycelium. There's another great book, actually, that just came out that's a much better science book, and I think it's Suzanne Simard. Hang on one sec. I'll look up the name of the book because it just came out. My friend, Welcome to Mushroom Hour, who's here on TikTok, he has a great podcast, and he just interviewed Suzanne, and her whole research is about mycelium and how it helps forests sort of tie together their nutritional systems, and it'll be a really good book. Okay, let's see. Google book. The book is called, for the person who asked about mycelium, it's called Finding the Mother Tree by Suzanne Simard. And I think it just came out, or it's about to come out, and that would be a phenomenal place to start. Yeah, go listen to the podcast. Welcome to Mushroom Hour. Darren is a great guy. He was blowing up on TikTok for a brief period of time, and then, man, the ban hammer came down on him, and he got nailed by his account getting reported a whole bunch of times. And so it's been really hard for him to grow ever since then. Because that's the thing, TikTok puts your account into bad standing, and it takes quite a while to come out of that. It's something that I've dealt with a lot of times. And it's not fun. kind of sucks to like make all this content and like try to teach people and then just have people like report you and say that what you're doing is illegal, and you're like, no, I'm literally just trying to teach people, especially to teach people to be safe, teach people to be responsible. I ask diligently to not talk to me about magic mushrooms because I found out the hard way we just can't even mention those. That is a non-topic of conversation. Oh, hey, Adorable Clover and Bailey Grease. Hi, guys. Yeah, the ban was BS. Stu White, I say mycelium. I also mean mycorrhizae. Mycorrhizal fungi have mycelium still. Lorax, I will refer you to my poster of toxic mushrooms up here. You're asking me what are the most toxic mushrooms. We can go look at the poster. I'll show you with that. Show you up close. There's no roach on my wall. Thanks though. Okay, so let's see. Adorable Clover was asking me about toxic mushrooms. So these are the amanitas. This is Amanita muscaria. It's not actually that toxic. You can eat Amanita muscaria if you boil it twice. Amanita pantherina is more toxic, but I've heard of people eating that for entheogenic effects. The really toxic amanitas are these ones. So this is section phalloides. So this is the death cap and the destroying angel. So this is phalloides and this is bispogera, but there's also a verosa. There's a couple different death caps that occur in different areas. So in California we have ochreata, and I've done some videos about that. So these are probably the most toxic mushrooms, one that kill the most people. There's also Smith's Amanita. All of these mushrooms, all these amanitas contain amatoxins. Ooh, almost broke my butter dish. So amatoxins are proteins. They're small peptides, and they will enter the bloodstream, enter the liver, and bind irreversibly to your RNA polymerase II. And so that's the enzyme that does transcription from DNA into RNA, and then the RNA gets turned into protein. And so basically the central dogma of biology is that DNA makes RNA makes protein, and if that system breaks down at any point, you're dead. And that's exactly what amatoxins do. By the fact that they're binding up all of the RNA polymerase II, they're inactivating all of your liver function. And you can imagine if your liver, which is a very important organ in your body, it detoxifies things, it does metabolism, it is like kind of the core of like how we work as humans. If the liver stops working, you're dead. So that's why amanitas are so toxic. And anything that has amatoxins in it also is very toxic. So there's some small mushrooms called gallerinas, which are very toxic. There's some lepiotas that have amatoxins. So those are the most toxic mushrooms, things that have amatoxins. So Bailey Grease, yeah, mycophilia is great. Eugenia Bone is really awesome. I have her book here somewhere. If you haven't watched my interview with Eugenia Bone, I highly recommend it. She is phenomenal. She's really nice. She's writing a cookbook right now. I got to meet her because she accepted one of my recipes for their cookbook, the Fantastic Fungi cookbook. And talking to Eugenia was a dream. She's awesome. She's really fun. People are asking me about where they should forage. I would say go check out the website iNaturalist. I haven't been to your state and I don't know your biomes or your seasons, but you can go check out iNaturalist and see what people are finding in your area. Yeah, Bailey, the Eugenia Bone is on Instagram. It's also on YouTube. And it will eventually, I'll turn it into a podcast. I'm just working on that kind of thing slowly. But I will put a lot of my interviews out in podcast format, hopefully. So someone asked, are parasites related to fungi and or bacteria? It depends on what kind of parasite you're talking about. Bacteria can be parasites, fungi can be parasites, animals can be parasites. Like anything can be a parasite. It's not a definition. It's more of a lifestyle. You know, it's not like a genetic background. It's different things become parasitic. There are going to be things that are like, in one context, they're symbiotic, and in another context, they're parasitic. And the line between what's symbiotic and what's parasitism is kind of a blurry line, because depending on the time of year, some mushrooms might appear a parasite on their like host tree, And then other times of the year, the mushroom might be giving back to the tree more than it's receiving. And so there's kind of a give and go. There's a push and pull in a lot of those relationships. Nope, there are no mushrooms that are poisonous to touch. Even the poisonous mushrooms you can safely touch. That's probably the number one question that I get, because everyone seems to have had like a mother or an auntie or a teacher who was like, don't touch mushrooms, those are poisonous. And you're like, oh my God, I can't touch them. You can touch them, just don't eat them. Don't eat shit on the ground that you find. You're like, I don't know what this is. Yeah, what do you like, one? Like, don't do that. But yeah, I can touch that entire poster of toxic mushrooms. I can touch all of them. Granted, I'm not going to like smear them around my hand and like lick my hand. I'm not going to like try to poison myself, but I've picked up plenty of poisonous mushrooms and looked at them and taken pictures of them and then put them back down, and I've been fine. I generally wash my hands when I get home, which is why all the soap, I keep getting like endorsement deal offers from soap companies, and I'm like, I don't want to sell soap, man. I wash my hands, but I'm not going to like sell your overpriced hipster soap because I wash my hands with it. I don't know. Maybe I should. Anyone see me an endorsement deal with soap? I don't think so. I'm very conscious about not doing things that I feel like affect my integrity. And because of that, I don't make really any money off social media. But like, I appreciate that you guys follow me anyhow. Hopefully it shows. Is it real that mushrooms can morph into other animals? No, that's not true at all. Where'd you hear that? Well, I think maybe what you're confusing is the fact that people always say that fungi and animals are closer than plants, which is true on an evolutionary scale, but like they're still very, very different. The big difference is that plants are anabolic in that they build their own sugars from sunlight, and plants and animals are catabolic in that they break down organic matter to make energy. Yeah, if your teacher's teaching you that, I worry about what else that teacher has gotten wrong. Hi, Sarah from Saudi Arabia. Yeah, Entangled Life is a great book. Really enjoy it. Merlin's a nice guy. He's given me some good advice. If you guys don't know, Merlin Sheldrake is Cosmo Sheldrake's brother. I was like pleasantly surprised, but also kind of like mind blown, because I'd been listening to Cosmo Sheldrake for years, and then suddenly I was like, wait, who's this guy Merlin? Why does he have the same last name? What a weird last name. And I was like, holy shit, they're brothers. And so when I got to talk to Merlin, I was like, hey, tell Cosmo to say what's up. And he's like, I will. I was like, yeah. It's wild. Sometimes the world seems so vast, and you like never meet your heroes, and like everything you do is just screaming into the void. And then sometimes you find out that like somebody you really respect, admire, like follows you and is aware of what you're doing, and that's so cool. So someone asked, are fungi inanimate, or does some species move and act? Well, so most fungi are living in their food, so in that sense they're kind of sedentary in that they're like, mycelium, and what we think of mushrooms are generally, it's moving, it's growing through the soil, through the wood. There are armillaria mushrooms that their rhizomorphs can travel like a quarter mile, almost half a mile, to find another tree, another victim. So they move, but they're not considered modal because they're not like swimming around. But there are fungi. There's different classes of fungi, different phyla of fungi. So there's chytrids and oomycetes, and there's some weird fungi that are modal. There's a lot of actually aquatic fungi, and those are modal. Fungi came from water originally. That's where they sort of paired up with algae and helped bring plants to land. And you guys don't know this necessarily, but like plants and fungi came to land together. They colonized the earth together, and without each other, they would have never been able to accomplish what they've accomplished, which is the full terraforming of our planet, which is cool. So Buddha the Creator, you asked me where can you buy fungi growing kits. So I'd recommend checking out my website. My mushroom discounts tab has some links to North Spore and to Nearby Naturals. And my discount codes will get you 10% off if you want to buy some mushroom kits. There's lots of other great mushroom producers too. Buy them from wherever you want. I'd suggest starting with like an oyster and maybe a lion's mane. Those are good mushrooms to grow. Someone's asking me about what books do I recommend. Again, I say go to my website, check out fastandmyfungi.com, and go check out the FAQ tab. I recommend some books and some resources and some other stuff that you guys can get on there and start learning about. Sure, you can ask a question about lichens. I can't promise you I can answer it, but I can. My computer's here. I can look it up. And we can find out in real time. So, and this is, I appreciate you guys hanging out with me on Saturday night. My partner's out of town, so I was like, screw it, I'll get on TikTok and go live for a little bit. It's nice to, you guys can't really talk back to me, but at least it feels like I'm having some social interaction. I'm not just alone on a Saturday night, even though I'm forever alone on a Saturday night. Where do lichens living on rocks get their nitrogen? Ooh. I'm not totally sure. So, what I'll tell you about lichens is, I think everyone knows, not everyone, most people are aware that lichen is a combination of fungi and cyanobacteria or algae. I'll grab some lichen just as a visual aid so we can talk about it. So here's some lichen. I don't know how well it focuses. Ooh. I really don't like it. It has so many filters on all this stuff. Let me see. Get this up close to get my camera to focus. Focus! Come on! If I get out of the frame. I don't know. Anyhow, this stuff is lichen. So it's it's a combination of algae and cyanobacteria paired up with fungus. And generally the photosynthetic activity of the lichen is due to the algae and the cyanobacteria, and the structure is due to this filamentous fungi. What was more recently discovered was that lichen has another fungi in it. So there's actually a yeast in here that helps to sort of do the metabolic translation between the algae and the filamentous fungi. So it's a combination of sort of 3 different organisms, and you can really mix and match those organisms with tremendous variety. And that's part of why there's so many different kinds of lichen. There's so much biodiversity of lichen, because you can have different fungi with the same cyanobacteria, and they'll look like different algae, and vice versa. And when you start mixing in different kinds of yeast, it gets really crazy. So where the nitrogen comes from, I'm not totally sure, but I would guess it has something to do with possibly the fungi helping to absorb nitrogen from their environment. Fungi do have the capacity to break down stone, generate soils. There may be some bacteria involved, something to that effect. Someone keeps asking Shroomdoom. I don't know what you're saying or why you keep saying that phrase, but if you'd like to explain yourself, I'm happy to talk to you about it. Yeah, lichen are cool. Little mini trees. I really like lichen. I first got turned on to lichen as being a really interesting organism when I was in the Galapagos back in 2014, because there was so much cool lichen there, and I was like, well, this is one of the coolest places on Earth. Has anyone done work on the lichen? And someone was like, actually, yeah, they have. They hand me this book where there's 12,000 species of lichen here on the Galapagos. 100 or 1,000 of them something are endemic and seen nowhere else. And I was like, wow, holy shit, that's really cool. So I started paying a lot more attention to lichens and really enjoyed learning about them. And they're one of those things that I'll keep an eye on if there's not a lot of mushrooms around. At least lichen are there. They're kind of cool. So. I don't know what Shroomdoom means either. That doesn't sound like a reasonable term. It doesn't make any sense. So we can't talk about psilocybe mushrooms. Lips are sealed. Someone's asked me university recommendations for PhD in plant pathology in the US. That's very specific, but I would say go to UC Davis. That's where I went. They have a fantastic plant pathology department and lots of great ag science stuff. But there's many other good programs in the US. Just look them up. No, I've never been to Tennessee or Memphis or anywhere around there. So my recommendation to you, MILF Messiah, would be to go on iNaturalist and scout out your local area, see what grows there, and see what you can find. I think this is probably a pretty good time of year for a lot of people to go out and go mushroom hunting, because there are morels about. I've seen some great ones here on TikTok. It's very cool. Usnea lichens are really cool. I agree. So I get this criticism a lot that people are like, you should stop hurting mushrooms. Don't chop the mushrooms. You're destroying them. And I'm like, okay, let's let's talk about that, right? I get accused frequently of destroying nature and trampling things and all this. People project all sorts of things onto me. I'll say I don't mess with the majority of mushrooms I find. I go out, I see a lot of mushrooms. I pick up the ones that I think will be interesting, and I'm showing you guys a small example. And I usually don't mess with the mushroom unless I know that there's multiple other ones around. And even if I draw on a mushroom, I frequently put that mushroom back. And if I cut up a mushroom, I usually put it back where it was. And I don't know if you guys know this, but mushrooms come up and they disappear, right? They rot out, they get eaten by bugs, slugs go after them. And so if I'm cutting up a mushroom, I'm really not hurting anything. I'm kind of just hastening the process. I'm cutting the mushroom up, and often I've cut up mushrooms and gone on my hike and then come back on the trail and found the pile of mushrooms I left just covered in bugs and slugs, and they're just yeah, we're having a party. And there's some degree of maybe the spores aren't getting dispersed quite as well, but I try to pat the mushroom out and disperse the spores. So people do a lot of projection on me, and I don't necessarily think it's fair because they don't know me. They don't go out on hikes with me. I'm doing a lot more good by trying to help people understand mushrooms. I encourage people, hey, don't destroy mushrooms when we're out on the trail. Really pisses me off when I go along and I see people that just kicked a mushroom and destroyed it. I'm generally not doing that. And I'm trying to get people to not do that. So, Hazy Hughes, if you have a real issue with me, send me a message. Let's talk about it. But flinging these kinds of things at me on a live broadcast isn't super fair, What species of mushrooms glow? I saw a glowing blue one once and it was cool. I've never seen a mushroom glow blue. Most mushrooms, if they glow any color, will glow kind of green because they're glowing usually because of luciferase. So I've seen jack-o'-lantern mushrooms, Omphallotus species, glow in real life. Those are pretty cool. Alan Rockefeller, who's a friend of mine, has done a lot of glow-in-the-dark or bioluminescent photography of mushrooms. So a lot of those take long exposure because he sets up his camera and it's a very dim glow, and he sets it up on a long exposure and is able to get some pretty cool pictures of it. Someone asked, what kind of mushroom does Mario use to get extra life? That would be Amanita muscaria. I've done lots of videos on that. You can go watch them. I can't tell you guys a favorite mushroom. If you want to know, I have a top 10 favorite mushroom countdown. It's on YouTube. It's on my website. You can go check that out. Are mushrooms grown from stores, grown in factories? Ella, you sound like you have kind of a deep-seated belief when you say it that way. Mushrooms in general grow in the wild. If you're buying mushrooms in a store, you're probably buying Agaricus bisporus, like cremini button mushrooms. Those are usually grown in large warehouses or underground. They usually use fermented chicken poop, and it's a fairly large commercial operation. Generally, the other sort of specialty mushrooms, oyster mushrooms, and stuff you'd see at the farmer's market kind of thing, those are usually grown by much smaller facilities, and they're grown on bags of sawdust mixed with rice bran and some gypsum kind of thing, and they have sort of a process for inoculating sterilely and letting them myceliate, and then they fruit mushrooms, and then they harvest those and bring them to market. So it's not really factory farming. There's some level of it's a food production thing, so they've got to be safe. You got to make sure that you have microbial testing and that you're not serving people mycotoxins and all this stuff. But it's the standards that a lot of other food production is held to. So it's certainly not grown in massive factories necessarily. But okay, sorry, I'm just catching up with your questions here. Someone's saying they have a circle of mushrooms and a white line, middle one's orange. I don't know. It sounds like you have a fairy ring and maybe some other mushroom fruiting in there too. Josu, you asked me what mushrooms are being used in modern biotechnology. Lots of them. If you want, you can check out the JGI website. I'm going to be filming a documentary down there in about a month. JGI is the Joint Genome Institute, so they have defense DOE money to do mushroom research, basically. So a common badger, go watch my video on enoki. I just did a video on that. I don't want to explain that here because I explained it in a video. And if you have more questions, just Google it. Getting back to mushrooms used in modern biotechnology, there's lots and lots of them. I think one of the ones you're seeing most often is Ganoderma species because they are being used for mycomaterials. They're able to make fabric and leather out of it. So there's 2 companies in the Bay Area doing that. They're also making Ganoderma mycelium growing into molds and stuff, and then they're baking that and turning that into packing material and furniture and insulation, all sorts of stuff. So that's pretty cool. And I mean, there's a whole bunch of other mushrooms. Like I can't summarize for you in one live session all of the different like biotechnology applications. There's a lot of cool stuff going on with not just mushrooms, but other kinds of fungi. So lots of yeasts and filamentous fungi, and they're being used as expression systems. They're being used as food additives. They're being used for therapeutic production, all sorts of stuff. So, Ella. Again, I would go check out my website, fastandbyfungi.com, because a lot of the questions you're asking could probably be answered by reading my FAQ section. You can't tell the difference between what's toxic and what's edible. You have to learn edible mushrooms one by one. Yes, I worked at UC Davis. I still work there now, but not for much longer. I don't know who this person is, so no. I've heard a lot of people ask me about the fungi on Mars. I'm skeptical. I haven't really seen enough evidence to make me think that those are fungi. I think it'd just be like a mineral deposit or something like that. I don't know. Which U.S. states have the best wild mushroom diversity? Well, do you want mushroom diversity or do you want like edible diversity? Because like the East Coast has way more mushroom diversity than the West Coast, but the West Coast has more of the big edible mushrooms that people really like to go hunting for. Is Paul Stamets' breakdown of determining poisonous from edible mushrooms legit? I haven't heard that, and I don't trust a lot of things that Paul Stamets says necessarily, so I don't know how much I would believe his breakdown of edible versus poisonous. The advice on edible versus poisonous, like I said, is go to my website, check out fastandbyfungi.com, go to the FAQ tab, and then read what I wrote. Yep, there's a mushroom that I can't talk about, so we can't talk about those. Sorry. I have something called Only Fungi that exists, and I'm talking about those mushrooms that we can't talk about on there. But I can't talk about that on TikTok either, so my lips are sealed in all the ways. What part of education made you fascinated with mushrooms? Well, I found some mushrooms as a kid, and that was really intriguing, and I like eating mushrooms. So I've been fascinated by fungi for a lifetime. But there was certainly a moment in New Zealand where I found a mushroom and I was like, what is this? I was living in New Zealand a couple years ago, and I had some free time after finishing my PhD, and I got really into mushroom hunting there. And there was a mushroom called Agrosby parasitica that's native to New Zealand that I found and really enjoyed. It was a great edible mushroom. Do I prefer eat lobster or king crab legs? I'd prefer anyone who would buy me expensive seafood. That sounds great. Is fungi at war with vegetation? Sort of not. I mean, that's a really broad thing. There's some fungi that are pathogenic. There's some fungi that are symbiotic. There's some fungi that are just saprobic and eating dead stuff. There's a whole spectrum of different kinds of relationships there, and things shift what kind of relationship they're having with plants throughout their lives. There's some mushrooms that live inside of a tree their entire life, and you never see them because they're an endophyte. And then when the tree dies, the mushrooms show up. And that's actually kind of what morels do. So that's why you see morels after disturbance, like fire and when things get knocked down. So, are all mushroom species complexes or only some? Oh, a common badger, that is a complicated question. I'm going to go with maybe. There are some like monotypic fungi species. I think most mushrooms could probably fit into like broad classifications, and our whole like concept of species and fungi is kind of obsolete. It's a human classification, but you definitely won't see me at Davis because I'm not on campus anymore, and I just got fired as a postdoc, so I won't be coming back to campus anytime soon. But cheers, maybe I'll give a talk at Davis sometime soon. Well, not soon. Whenever COVID's over, I'll go back to campus. People are asking favorite mushroom to eat. Go check out my top 10 favorite edible mushroom countdown. It's on YouTube. It's on my website. It's like hard to recount the top 10 every single time people ask, so that's why I give you links. Again, a lot of the questions about like, hey, how do I get into mushroom hunting? What books do I use? How do I learn about stuff? You can answer this all by going to my website, checking out fascinatedbyfungi.com, and go to the FAQ tab. Thank you. I'm glad you guys like the shirt. My partner got it for me a while ago, and it's a cool shirt. So, oh, I'm not just fungi guy. I'm Dr. Fun Guy. Got a PhD and shit, you know? Not about mushrooms. It was about fungi in its way, you know. I can talk about the lobster poster, sure. So it's not a poster, it's actually like a tea towel. I have a apron of this too. This was a design that my friend Lindley did for me. She's a phenomenal artist up in Oregon, and she knows that I love to cook. And she knows that I'm a New Englander, so I have a particular fondness for lobster and I don't know. Lobster is part of my identity as a New Englander, I guess, you know. So I like lobster mushrooms. She knows I like to cook, so she illustrated this lobster chef and a lobster mushroom and put my logo on it, and that's basically the story of the lobster dish towel there. But you can find it on my website if you're interested. So, death cap is an Amanita phalloides. It's a very toxic mushroom that contains amatoxins. I was talking about them earlier. Yes, truffles can be farmed. They're called trufferes. You inoculate the trees when they're young, and it takes about 10 years for the truffles to start being produced. They tend to be very expensive, and there's a high fail rate. So that's part of why truffles are still very expensive. Have I seen the lobster film? No, I have not. But I grew up basically where like the Perfect Storm was filmed. So. Well, guys, it's been fun. It's a good Saturday night. I may sign off here unless I've got any more pressing mushroom questions. Someone says, I have lots of inflammation and mushroom spasms, so what mushrooms should you eat? Ninja James, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. It sounds like you should go see a doctor. I wouldn't count on mushrooms to solve your problems. But the inflammation could probably be helped by eating really any mushroom. Mushrooms contain complex polysaccharides, which break down in your gut and help you digest. Well, I guess the polysaccharides are broken down by different types of bacteria. Because they're very complex polysaccharides, there's a lot of different linkages. And these different bacterial linkages the different like polysaccharide linkages help select for different types of bacteria. So you increase your gut microbiota biodiversity by eating lots of mushrooms. You're going to get bacteria that eat chitin and break down some of these unusual starch linkages in the mushroom walls. And a lot of those bacteria are associated with lower levels of inflammation. So just eating mushrooms in general should, in theory, help you. The muscle spasms, I'm not sure, and don't look to mushrooms as being a panacea to cure all your ails. There's probably going to be lifestyle changes and other things. Like I said, go see a doctor. I'm a doctor, but I'm like the useless kind of doctor. I have a PhD, but not an MD. So I would always defer to a medical doctor on questions of health. So a common badger, you are asking the best questions. Do endophytes have a free mycelial form? Some do. I was talking about mushrooms that live as endophytes and then like grow on their host. I was just looking at one today called the cramp ball, which is these little black balls that grow all over dead tan oaks. They live as endophytes in the tree when the tree is alive, and then when the tree dies, they grow saprobically. So they grow mycelium at that point into the wood and eat it, and then produce mushrooms. So. Somebody in New Jersey has a surge of mushrooms in their garden. I don't know if I can ID those mushrooms for you. I mean, you can always send me a pic on Instagram, but what I recommend doing is you upload those photos of the mushrooms in your garden to iNaturalist, and make sure if you're going to upload photos or even send me photos, don't send me poorly lit mushrooms. Send them in context on the lawn. I want to see the top of the cap. I want to see underneath the cap. I want to see the stipe. I'm not going to be able to help you if you send bad pictures. And I don't mean to be mean about that. I just receive like lots and lots of blurry, shitty mushroom pictures today. And I'm like, I don't know. I can't tell. So I'm just trying to, help people out by giving them a good idea of how to take a good picture of a mushroom. So. There are no mushrooms in the U.S. that are dangerous to touch. As far as I know, there's really no mushrooms in the world that are dangerous to touch. All mushrooms are pretty much safe to touch. Don't eat them. And this is a funny concept to me because like people are like, oh, don't you know mushrooms are dangerous? And I'm like, yeah, but there's literally no mushroom that can hurt you from touching it, whereas there's a lot of animals and plants that hurt you by touching them. And no one goes around being like, well, animals are poisonous. And you're like, well, yeah, some animals are poisonous, some aren't. Like, same thing with mushrooms. Some mushrooms are poisonous, some aren't. But there's no mushroom that'll hurt you if you touch it. So I think that's funny. Ninja James, I'm sorry to hear that, dude. If you're interested, there are a lot of mushroom supplements out there. You could try taking some. I generally recommend people don't take mushroom supplements because I think it's kind of a waste of money, but like that's because it's generally healthy adults taking something they don't need. If you are experiencing a lot of stuff that is difficult to deal with, you could definitely try some mushroom supplements. I can't promise you they do anything for you, but it's something you could try, Stuff like lion's mane might be a good one for you. Again, I think eating mushrooms is better than just taking extracts, but I understand if, that's not possible for you. So good luck. Somebody found morels outside of Portland, Oregon in a burn. Way to go. Well done. I don't think that dementia is really going to be helped that much by taking any mushroom supplements, but the one to take would be lion's mane. I don't think it's necessarily going to do much, but again, you can try. If you guys want, there's a company that I trust their mushroom supplements. They're called Mushroom Revival. If you go to my website, fastingbyfungi.com, and go to the mushroom discounts page, I have a discount code for Mushroom Revival, and you can save like 10%. They sell sort of like mushroom herbal tinctures that are really high quality, made with like actual fruiting bodies. A lot of the mushroom supplements out there are made with mycelium, and you end up paying for rice bran. You're not paying for the actual active ingredients in the mushroom, you're paying for rice bran. And you pay a lot of money for it. So like if you're gonna buy mushroom supplements, at least get ones from somebody who makes their mushroom supplements out of real mushrooms. That's what I say. So that's why I put Mushroom Revival on my website, because it's like, I know them, I've seen their farm. They at least make their stuff with real mushrooms. So okay, I finished my tea. So I'm gonna go watch some anime or do something. It's Saturday night. We'll see. Anyhow, fun talking to you guys. Thank you for all of the questions, and thanks for hanging out with me. If you have more questions for me, shoot me a DM or go to my website, fascinatedbyfungi.com. Check out the FAQ tab. Got lots of good stuff there. I've got cool mushroom t-shirts, links to other stuff. Please follow me, Instagram, YouTube, what am I on? Pinterest, Twitter, Twitch, Only Fungi. There's a lot of stuff out there. Look for me on the internet. Have a good one. Bye, guys.